Jack the Ripper, the name that would terrify London for generations. But in the summer of 1888, nobody knew him yet. What began as another grim night in Whitechapel would soon become the star of the most infamous killing spree in history. This is Whispers of Crime, Motive and Murder. Subscribe now, because tonight we're stepping back into the dark alleys of Victorian London, where the Ripper first struck. It was the early hours of Friday, August 31st, 1888. The East End of London was alive with shadows. Overcrowded, poverty-stricken streets filled with brothels, drunken men, and women forced to sell themselves just to survive. Whitechapel was a place of desperation, but what happened that night would go far beyond desperation. At 3:40 a.m., a carman named Charles Cross was making his way to work along Bucks Row, a dimly lit street near Whitechapel Road. In the darkness, he noticed what he thought was a tarpaulin lying on the ground. But as he got closer, he realized it wasn't fabric at all. It was the body of a woman, lying on her back, skirt pulled up. Cross flagged down another passerby, Robert Paul, and together they examined her. The woman appeared to be dead, but they weren't certain. They decided to alert the nearest constable. When Constable John Neal arrived minutes later, the scene became horrifyingly clear. The woman, later identified as Mary Ann Nichols, 43 years old, had been savagely attacked. Her throat had been cut twice, so deep it nearly severed her head. And when police lifted her clothing, they discovered further mutilations. Deep incisions across her abdomen, jagged and brutal. Mary Ann Nichols had lived a tragic life, separated from her husband, struggling with alcoholism and surviving through prostitution. On the night of her murder, she had been turned away from a lodging house for not having enough money for a bed. She told friends she'd earned on the street. But instead, she crossed paths with a killer who wanted much more than her money. Constable Neal called for help, and the body was transported to the Whitechapel Workhouse Infirmary mortuary, where Dr. Reeves Llewellyn performed the post-mortem. His findings were chilling. Nichols' throat had been cut from left to right, the wounds inflicted by someone with strength and precision. The abdominal cuts were savage, but strangely deliberate. The police noted there was no sign of robbery. Her small possessions, a comb, a handkerchief, and a broken piece of mirror, were untouched. Whoever killed her wasn't interested in valuables. News of the murder spread quickly. Whitechapel was no stranger to violence, but this killing felt different, more brutal, more deliberate, and it wouldn't be the last. Within just 8 days, another woman would be found slaughtered in the same horrific fashion. The killer had begun his reign of terror, and London was about to meet the man history would never forget, Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper struck again, and this time the brutality was even worse. Just a week after his first killing, London woke to another nightmare in Whitechapel. It was the early morning of Saturday, September 8, 1888. The East End was restless. Just days earlier, the gruesome murder of Mary Ann Nichols had shaken Whitechapel. But at 29 Hanbury Street, terror returned. At around 6 a.m., a resident named John Davis stepped into the backyard and froze. There, lying near the steps, was the mutilated body of a woman. She had been savagely slaughtered. The victim was identified as Annie Chapman, 47 years old, a woman whose life had been marked by hardship, abandoned by her husband, addicted to alcohol, and scraping by through prostitution. She had been seen alive just hours before her death. At about 5:30 a.m., several witnesses reported seeing Annie talking with a man near Hanbury Street. One described him as foreign-looking, with a dark coat and deerstalker hat. Another recalled hearing voices in the yard, a woman's cry of no, and then silence. When police examined Annie's body, the horror became clear. Her throat had been cut deep, nearly decapitating her. Her abdomen was ripped open with surgical-like precision, but what shocked investigators most was what was missing. Her uterus had been removed and taken by the killer. Dr. George Bagster Phillips, the police surgeon, arrived at the scene. He concluded that the killer had skill with a knife, perhaps a butcher, or even someone with medical training. The mutilations were not random. They were deliberate, and they had meaning. Around Annie's body, police found eerie details: a torn envelope, 2 combs, and a leather case containing pills. Her few belongings had not been stolen, once again proving the killer wasn't after money. By now, Scotland Yard was alarmed. Inspector Frederick Aberline, a seasoned detective, was assigned to the case. The similarities between Mary Ann Nichols and Annie Chapman's murders were undeniable. Both were prostitutes, killed in the early hours, their throats cut, their abdomens mutilated. This was no ordinary killer. This was the work of one man, and he had just escalated his violence. But if London thought things couldn't get any worse, they were wrong. Because within weeks, Jack the Ripper would strike again, not once, but twice in a single night. The world would call it the double event. Jack the Ripper didn't just kill once that night. He killed twice. Within the space of an hour, 2 women were left dead on London streets, their bodies marked by a savage hand. It was a night of September 30th, 1888. Whitechapel was restless, the fear of the Ripper spreading like wildfire, but no one could imagine the terror that was about to unfold. At 1 a.m., a woman named Elizabeth Stride, 44 years old, was seen with a man near Berner Street. Witnesses described him as middle-aged, wearing a dark coat and a peak cap. Around 1 to 1:30 a.m., Elizabeth was found in Dutfield's yard, just off Berner Street, by Louis Deemschutz, who was returning home with his horse and cart. At first, he thought his horse had stumbled over a bundle of cloth, but when he struck a match, the light revealed something far darker, Elizabeth Stride's body. Her throat had been slashed, but unlike the Ripper's previous victims, her body showed no further mutilation. This puzzled investigators. Was the killer interrupted? Many believed Deemschutz's arrival scared the Ripper away before he could finish. But the Ripper wasn't done. Less than an hour later, at 1:45 a.m., just over a mile away in Mitre Square, another victim was discovered. Catherine Eddowes, 46 years old, had been brutally murdered. And this time, the Ripper unleashed his full horror. Catherine's throat was cut, her face mutilated, her nose partially severed and her eyelids slashed. Her abdomen was ripped open, and like Annie Chapman before her, organs were removed. Part of her kidney and uterus were taken by the killer. Dr. Frederick Gordon Brown, who examined the body, was shaken by the sheer precision. Whoever the Ripper was, he knew where to cut. As police rushed to investigate, a chilling clue was found. In Golston Street, between the 2 murder sites, police discovered a blood-stained piece of Catherine Eddowes' apron. Nearby, written in chalk on a wall, was the infamous message, "The jurors are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." Was it written by the killer, or was it anti-Semitic graffiti already on the wall? Police, fearing riots, quickly erased it. The mystery remains unsolved to this day. Then came the letters. Just days earlier, the press had received the now famous Dear Boss letter, signed Jack the Ripper. In it, the killer mocked police, promising to clip the lady's ears off. And after Catherine Eddowes' body was found, with one of her ears mutilated, the chilling letter seemed all too real. Another letter soon followed. The saucy Jackie postcard, bragging about the double event of killing 2 women in one night. Whether hoax or genuine, the name Jack the Ripper was now cemented in history. But the Ripper's reign of terror wasn't finished. Weeks later, he would commit his most shocking and gruesome murder yet. One that would leave even hardened detectives trembling. The night Mary Jane Kelly was found would change everything.